Can we give it 1 more minute? Is that okay? Let's do that. Are you okay with that, Chani? This is very exciting. And first and foremost, I really want to say thank you, Chani, for just getting the that WhatsApp from you. It just, Baruch Hashem, we in Cleveland have had the privilege to have Chani in our hometown and to be able to speak for us for the Chizuk mission personally on a retreat, and for the reunions for the Chizuk mission, and it's always more than a treat. It's always so enlightening, and it's always so beautiful, and in your sweet but brilliant way. It's so much appreciated. I ask, please, that the learning tonight could be and should be in the for my mother, Sheinel Bas Moshe, whose yahrzeit will be in Mitzvah Hashem on Lag BaOmer, her first yahrzeit, and I miss her very much. And for Yuchama Chaya from a Basto Pinchas, a very, very special Chizuk sister to all of us. And to Harav Yisrael Noach ben Yitzchak Matisyahu of Noach, who is always in my heart, and gratitude for being able to learn and to grow and to be able to take and spread, you know, so much of his Torah's Chaim. And I want to say to all of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for making this possible, and for everybody that helped to sponsor this evening and make it really possible, because it's we just need to keep on going and growing and being able to have these opportunities, because this is what's going to turn the tide. And Chani, thank you. And I do want to say a very special thank you to our dear Aviva. Aviva, boy, you really, Baruch Hashem, behind the scenes, on top of the scenes, inside out, helping everything to move so smoothly. So I thank you publicly and privately. And again, thank you everybody for being here. And without further ado, Chani, we're so excited to hear from you.
Pleasure. And Barry, I think the greatest chus to your mother, Shalom, is having a daughter like you. That's a testimony to who she must have been. So I think we're all honored to have the connection to her neshama tonight, and to the others you mentioned. I want to start with some questions. We're involved in this beautiful mitzvah of Sefira. I want to just look at the words of the mitzvah and start with 3 questions, and hopefully by the end of tonight, flesh out the answers, along with hopefully a mindset to sort of keep us going and growing through Sefira. So we're told, Usfartem lachem, that you should count for yourselves. We're told to start mimacharas hashabbos, the day after Shabbos, which really means the day after the first day of Pesach, and we're told to count Sheva Shabbosos Tamimos, 7 complete weeks, literally 7 weeks that are complete. So we have some questions here. Are we allowed to be interactive? Yeah? So what are the questions? Usfartem lachem mimacharas hashabbos, Sheva Shabbosos Tamimos. Does anybody have some questions here? Anyone?
You can unmute yourself and ask.
Please unmute yourself and ask. Each of those phrases should have a question. Usfartem lachem mimacharas hashabbos, Sheva Shabbosos Tamimos. Okay, I know you're all being shy and just, hiding behind your anonymity. So I'll just, take over. Usfartem lachem, what does that mean? Count for yourselves. What does that mean? Who else would I be counting for? Isn't it redundant? We know that the Torah wastes no words. To be told lachem, just tell me, usfartem, you should count. What do we gain by hearing lachem? That's number 1. Number 2, mimacharas hashabbos. Why do we have to be calling the Yontif of Pesach Shabbos? So yes, Shabbos could be the catch-all phrase for a type of a holiday, but still in all, it doesn't seem as accurate as saying mimacharas, Yom Rishon of Pesach, or mimacharas hachag, or hayom tov, or just to talk about it in reference to the Omer, the days, the dates. But why call it Shabbos? And number 3, Sheva Shabbosos Tamimos, 7 weeks that are complete. The obvious question is, you're telling me it's a week, so a week is complete. Why would I think that it would be an incomplete week? So let's think about those three questions, put them in the back of your mind, and they will percolate over the course of tonight. So let's move backward and then bring ourselves forward. Coming out of Pesach is a joy because Pesach gave us freedom. What's the reaction to freedom, ladies? What's exciting about being free? Like kids want to get out of school, right? That last day in June. And then the next morning they wake up and say, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing today? And that's really the obvious question. We know that we should want to be free. We're not always so clear on what to do with being free. I remember as a kid, my father, Rav Shalom, asked us what we wanted for our afikomen. And my brother said, I want a yacht. What's a yacht? Like he knew he should want it, but wasn't quite sure what it was. And it's the same thing with freedom. I want to be free. I want to have that time to myself. I don't want to be a slave to fill in the blank. But the greatest reaction to freedom is not freedom in and of itself. And I heard this so beautifully from Rav Yitzchak Breitowitz of Ar Sameach. He said that coming out of Mitzrayim, freedom was meant to lead us to the responsibility of Shavuos. Freedom in and of itself is not a gift. Freedom is a gift when it brings us to a greater place of potential. And that means it needs to go along with some level of responsibility. What's that famous quote? That the soul is like a violin string, that it doesn't make music without some tension, right? That unless you have a context, unless you have a placement for your freedom, the freedom doesn't do much for you as a being. You know, I'll give you the most obvious proof. After slaves were freed in the South, what happened? Most of them didn't know what to do. Nobody gave them tools. No one taught them who they could be. So they stayed on as sharecroppers, doing the same thing for less than minimum wage because they didn't have the creativity of a context to their freedom. Are we making sense? So coming out of Mitzrayim, where were we as people? It says that on the Yam Suf, Ra'a Shifcha al Hayam, Mashalo Ra'a Yechezkel ben Buzi, that the slave on the sea, the maidservant on the sea, saw what the greatest of prophets didn't see. They were able to literally point at God and say, Zekeli, this is my God, Anveyu, I'm in, I want to make him beautiful. But they didn't know how. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz asked, why are we calling her a Shifcha al Hayam if she was a prophet? Because that was just the point. They received this great flash of inspiration, but they were still enslaved. They had no preparation for it. They had no education for it. So it was sort of like this tremendous burst of a birth without really an understanding of what world they were going into or how it came to be. So after that incredible revelation of Pesach, of Yam Suf, now starts the process of putting a context on that freedom. So let me teach you what you're free to be, what you're free to do and become. And that's what Sefira is, that we're moving with a process towards Sinai. And by the time we get to Sinai, we will have become the kalim, the vessels, to house this infinite Torah that's so much bigger than we can imagine fitting in us. So the process towards Sinai, I guess, is the process toward responsible living, toward living with a context. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, that sounds awful. Responsible living? Don't I want to be living with freedom? And don't I want to be living with spontaneity? Yes and no. I'll give you an example. Let's say you go to an amazing concert. You go to this Tzvat concert. There are these guys that look like they're just so spiritually connected, and they're playing their guitars and they're playing their violins, and they're just losing it. Just everybody's dancing, and this incredible vibration coming out of this music, and you say, I gotta play like that. And you buy a guitar and you close your eyes and you start strumming, and neighbors are complaining, right? This is a problem. Now, what's the problem? Because to have the freedom that that musician has playing that guitar, do you know how long it took him to get there? He had to learn the chords. He had to practice. He had to feel the music. It had to become something that was him. Once you have that, then you could play. So it's not that gaining responsibility gives us a drier life. It gives us the tools to really be able to use the neshama in a way that's most freeing, most beautiful, most personally expressive. So Sinai is going to give me that. Sefira is going to open me up to that by bringing me into the process of becoming that keli, becoming that vessel. So let's go to the first question. Usfartem lachem. What does that mean? That you're counting for yourself? You're counting to become yourself. You're counting not the days, because Sinai is going to happen whether I'm there or not. But you're counting to create the preparation of self to join Sinai. You're counting to become you in a way that you wouldn't be without that counting. And that's why, by the way, we count up and not down, because a countdown means I'm counting down to an event which will happen regardless. A count up is that I'm creating a binyan, I'm creating a building that my counting is creating. So I count down to someone's wedding that I want to go to. I count up if I'm the person creating the wedding. Oh, this is what we did today. This is what we did tomorrow. This is what, oh, it's the 30th day and we've already done X, Y, and Z. But a guest who's counting down might fall asleep and miss the wedding. They're not the ones that are creating it. So, uspartem lachem. This isn't just that you're counting to an event, you're counting to create yourself the way that only Sefira can. So now let's look at the next question. Sheva Shabbasos Tamimos. What's my goal to get out of this count? And the goal is that I want to focus on showing God that I'm ready and excited about life's greatest work, the work in life that will make us Tamimos, that will make our souls complete. What work is that? What's the work that will make my soul most complete? It's the work of relationships. No other work in life is ever going to make me the person I could be more than relationships will. Let's understand why. When Yosef was meeting up with his brothers after Yaakov died, the brothers were very, very concerned that Yosef would finally, rightfully take revenge. Yaakov's dead. They have no protection. Yosef doesn't have to worry about upsetting him anymore. So they're just waiting. They're waiting for the shoe to drop. And Yosef senses their nerves. And he says, I want to reassure you, I'm not taking revenge. Why not? L'man aso kayom hazeh. I want to tell you that everything that transpired, kayom hazeh, as today is day, lahachayos amrav, it was meant for me to revive the nation. Now, what was Yosef telling them? He was telling them, I want you to know that I'm proud of who I became. But I'm not proud of the leader that you see. Kayom hazeh, the Gemara says, there's another place in the Torah that Yosef is taught, that we learn about Yosef rather, and that place is also referred to with the beginning words of Kayom Hazeh. It was actually the part of the Torah referring to Yosef being confronted by the wife of Potiphar who tries to seduce him. Now, it wasn't just Eshes Potiphar that wanted Yosef. According to some opinions in the Gemara, Yosef very much wanted the wife of Potiphar. And that was a relationship that was really difficult for him. Says Yosef, Vayihi kayom hazeh. Do you know who I am? I'm the person that made it because of who I became through that relationship. I'm the person who I am because I'm not taking revenge with you in our relationship. That who I am in terms of my choices in life has been the result of my relationship work. Ladies, that's who we really are. Everything else, it's wonderful, but most of it's about God, who my family is, what my capacity is as a human being, what my talents are, what my weaknesses are, what my IQ is, what my propensity for work is. Most of that's all about God. But who I am is what I choose to give meaning to in my life, the circumstances of my life and what I do with them. And the most challenging part of that is how I come to view and handle my relationships. I remember one of my kids was getting bullied in school. Terrible. I didn't know what to do. You can't tell on a bully, it gets worse. You can't really go into school and make a fool out of your child, they'll get more ashamed. So I was sitting with my son trying to figure out what to do the next day. And I said, honey, I can't understand it. I know his mother. She's the most amazing teacher. And he says, well, Ma, I just don't think he attends her classes. And I remember thinking, at the end of the day, no matter how good you do at your job, it all comes down to your personal relationships where you are the most irreplaceable, right? That who we are and who we're not, so much of it's going to be about relationship work. Says Hashem, Sheva Shabbosos Tamimos. I want you to become complete in these weeks. And how do you become complete? That you prepare for getting the Torah by doing the work of becoming complete in terms of the attributes you need for relationships. Now, what are you going to say? I am complete. I know relationships. I communicate. I do chesed. I give. I cook. We have intimacy. We're doing it all. We are relationship people. I'm checking off the boxes. I've read the books. I know how often I do what and to who. I'm good. So what does God say? I know you're good, but you deserve better. Let me explain. Let's say someone's building a house and they hire a wonderful worker. And this guy has a wonderful reputation, but he has the reputation of being fast. And the way that he shaves off time is that if he has boards and he's creating the foundation, says the Chafetz Chaim, he takes one wooden board, he takes another, and he keeps putting one over the other, the way that builders, I guess, do. But what he does is that if he finds a board with a bump, instead of shaving down that bump and taking the time to sand it down and making sure it's good before the next one goes on, this man just takes something, digs out a hole on the next piece of wood, and puts it on so that the bump doesn't show. Does that make sense? He's a builder, right? Is that so? That's what he does. So to the naked eye, the building looks beautiful. Says the Chafetz Chaim, there are people that may look beautiful to the outside, but they've done a really fast, messy job when it comes to the inside. So they have this beautiful building, but there's so many bumps and there's so many holes and there's so many possibilities of rot and sagging and all that underneath because they never did the work to make sure that the inside was what it should be. I have an embarrassingly crazy example. I have a cousin who was living in Florida, became very wealthy very quickly, wanted to build a house, hired a worker who totally ripped him off. He used wood that had termites. So the foundation literally was eaten up and the house caved in, a waterfront mansion caved in because these termites brought down his house. Never checked the wood for quality. So these things, I guess, happen. Let's go back to Mimos. Says Hashem, I know that you have relationships, but I want you to get to a place of more. By what does that mean? That you have the facade of everything that you do well. And I'm not taking away from that. Doing is important. Doing chesed, acting in the way that you should, giving in the way that you should, persisting in the way that you should, bonding to the people in your life, seeming that you're proud in your image. All of those are wonderful. But tevimos mean take it to the inside. Don't just think about your productivity. Think about the essence of who you are and what you think while you're doing and what you're feeling in the process of having your relationships. Because if we don't do that work, we never build the structure from the inside out. When Hashem created man, he wanted man to be involved in two pursuits. Just like a tree, Ha'adam eitz hasadeh, men are like trees. Hashem wanted the trees to be osepri, to produce fruit. But he wanted them also, says the Maharal, to be eitz pri. I want you to be a tree that's intrinsically fruit. I want the bark of you to taste like fruit. I want you yourself to be the fruit inside and to produce. But just like the trees, they produced, but only the esrog tree became a fruit inside. The rest of the trees kept producing, but never came to that place of shifting their essence to a place that was just so delicious. So take Sefira, says Hashem, and take all the midos that you're busy with and bring them to the 7th degree of perfection. The rest of the world may not notice the difference, but you'll feel so much more like you. That you take chesed, you take your kindness, you take gevura, you take your discipline, you take your tiferes, you take your compassion, you take your netzach, your endurance, you take your hod, your humility and your greatness, your yesod, your bonding, and your malchus, your regalness. You pair them all with each other in ways that it becomes grand. And then you have an airtight vessel to hold the Torah that's about the next level of relationship to the divine. So the lachem is really about us in the most beautiful and the deepest way. You know, I think that all of us, before Sefira, we could be really good people. But there's always an until, okay? I'll be good until. Or a when. I'll apologize when, or I'll forgive her if. I had a wonderful couple that I was working with recently. The woman struggles with anger issues. Terrible anger issues. So I said, have you ever done any work on anger? You know, it must be hard for you to have all that anger. She said, I've been seeing a therapist for 10 years for anger. 10 years. That's a long time. And do you see any progress? She goes, well, I won't. So I said, you won't see progress? You're seeing someone for 10 years? That's a big investment to know that you won't. She said, well, I won't because he doesn't deserve for me to see my progress until he makes the changes he has to make. So I looked at her, I said, you know, I'm with you. He's got to make his changes. But who's suffering more? Do you deserve that anger? So is it about the people in my life that deserve or don't deserve my growth? Is it about the person that deserves for my forgiveness? That person might be dead. That person might be in jail. That person might not even remember my name. I deserve to forgive because I don't need that weight. So the beauty of Sefira is lachem. Don't make it about what's deserved or what you're ready for or what somebody else is doing and if they're doing as much. And it's not tit for tat. It's all about us. To Mimos, that I want to know at the end of the day that I was complete, that I was whole. There was someone that I felt very hurt by recently. And I have every reason to hold on. I know I have every reason to hold on. Nobody would tell me otherwise, at least not for a while. And I was taking a walk this morning and it hit me. I said, this happened to me. This happened to me. It didn't happen to somebody else. And this person's part of my life. And that was ordained by God. So I could stand here focusing on the messenger and have every right to be as upset as I am starting out this walk. But maybe I could use this walk, understanding why I needed that to happen for selfish reasons. That by the end of this walk, I want to get something out of it that works for me. And it was a long walk. It was a long walk. But by the end of the walk, I was able to come home and I said to my husband, I know what I'm doing with this. I know what I'm doing with this. And then the anger sort of wasn't as big anymore because it wasn't really where I wanted to focus. So it was lachem, it was me. That I want to use this to become more complete, not because I'm a shmata, but because that's what I deserve. I deserve to use that part of my life and not be ruined by it and just making it bigger than it needs to be otherwise. So we're filling these holes. Just like when the Jews came to Sinai all those years ago, there was this miracle that they were totally healed. No one was blind, no one was deaf, no one limped. Every part of them was healed and whole. That we create the wholeness of self in approaching Sinai as being those kalim, those vessels that are tmimos. So it's not that the weeks become complete. Weeks are complete. It's that we become complete. But that leaves us with one last question. Why do we say mimacharas hashabbos, that we start after Shabbos? Let's get into the mindset of what it means to focus on relationships. Ladies, we do evaluate ourselves a lot by what we do. What do you do for a living? What do you accomplish, right? How much of fill in the blank do you have? Are you busy with? And doing is big, but we're saying that being is more. What's the word that describes true growth to a Jew? The word that describes the truest growth to a Jew is the word Shabbat. What does it mean to be Shomer Shabbat? We define ourselves as keeping Shabbos. How do you know if someone's religious? You ask, is that person Shomer Shabbat? You don't say, are they Shomer Kashrut? You don't say, do they keep Shabbos? Why is that? Because Shabbos is our definition. What does the word Shabbos mean? Literally, the word Shabbos means a cessation, to totally stop, to totally stop. Shabbos is about doing. You're hosting, you're doing, you're eating, you're busy. But Shabbos really, in its truest sense, is a cessation. Shabbos is when you get off that treadmill of life and you just stop. And you look at those candles that you lit and you realize that they represent you and whatever loved ones you're lighting for. And you give yourself a chance after a whole week to think, who was I this week? Who do I want to be next week? Who are these lights in my life? How do I feel toward them? What might I need to tweak? What might I need to communicate? How do I want to use this time where no one's telling me what I have to be? And I could choose who I really am, and that's really myself in a way that nothing else is. Shabbos is that time where we really focus on the eighth tree, on the intrinsic part of me, and not what I produce just because I have to or someone else is paying me to. So how are we starting our journey of counting? Mimacharat HaShabbat. Start from the Shabbos mentality, from the mentality of knowing that this is not work that's about doing. This is work that's about feeling. This is work that's about thinking. And that's painful for a lot of people. It's supposed to be blissful to have a Shabbos. They did a study a few years back of teenagers, but older teenagers, I think it was 17 to 19. And they wanted to see what's happening to the minds of people that are spending so much time with machinery, right? With media, with gadgets. So they took these kids and they said, we have a treat for you. You have 20 minutes off, nothing to do. We're putting you in a lovely room with a pen and a paper. You could just think and just write to your heart's content, just like, review and just spend some time being with yourself. But if you really, really get bored, the only thing that you could do is that we're putting a buzzer in this room. But if you press the buzzer, you will get some sort of electric shock. It'll affect your system. But if you're desperate enough for something to do, would you believe that 85% shocked themselves rather than sit and think and write alone? So Shabbos is very foreign to our culture in a lot of ways nowadays. But says Hashem, to grow mimacharas haShabbos. You're trying to do the really beautiful work of filling those holes. So you got to come from a place of a Shabbos mentality. Let me just be. Let me just reflect. Let me just take this time, even if it's those 5 minutes a day, to just know myself. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. When I came home from going on the wonderful Chizuk mission, I was so inspired by so many of the ideas. And I live right down the block. I live right up the block from the Ribnitzer Rebbe's grave. So I said to my husband, I think I'm going to start going and doing hisbodedus in the morning at the Ribnitzer's grave. Going every morning to do hisbodedus at the grave? So I said, I think so. It's a holy place. He said, did you have any connections to the Ribnitzer? I said, no, I'm going to. This is going to be my hisbodedus place. This is Khan. If you're so into hisbodedus, why not bring it to our kitchen table? Just sit, wake up, drink your coffee, and do hisbodedus at the kitchen table. Why can't you do it wherever you are? And I said, I didn't think of that. But ladies, it's really nice to do it at my kitchen table. I'm not taking away from the Ribnitzer. I enjoy that too. But the beauty of just that 5-minute window to think wherever you are, even if it's not the glitz of the perfect place and the perfect setting and that perfect music being piped in from the back left, but that wonder of just being in your mind and letting yourself know yourself that much better. What is my chesed about? Am I really connecting through it? Am I really doing it in a way that's about me and growing and not just about the image of? Am I doing it in a way that I feel regal and not used? The beauty of just thinking about the mythos of our life and becoming that much more and coming to connect to them fully. So what do we do when we think about these goals? We think, okay, I want to create relationships. What kind of relationships do I want to have? I want to be the type of person that really hears others, that really focuses on others. I want to be the person that pays attention to them with no selfish agenda of my own. I want it to be totally about them and for them. I want to be the type of person that's not always taking everything personally and saying, why me? I heard Dr. Pelkowitz years ago saying, whenever you say lama, why, change it to lima, for what? What might I use this for? What might I learn from it? So I want to be this person that's more whole. How do I get there with others? By starting with myself. And I was thinking about this today in a very real way for the first time on this walk of mine, that if the problem of Sefira is that they didn't understand what it meant, to love others like yourself, if they misconstrued that and did not respect others enough. So we have to get it right. So we're busy trying to love others, but there's a secret. The last word tells you how. Kamocha, like yourself. How do I love myself? Because maybe if I don't, I'm going to get all my relationships wrong. So let's use the tools of Sefira to understand what my goals are in loving myself. Those relationships that I want, where I'm really there, where I really listen, where I really make it about them without my own judgment and agenda, where I really focus on lima, what I want to use the things in my life for that I experience. I'm going to start with me. And I'll tell you what I mean. Me, I'm this Bas Yisrael. I'm the daughter of Yaakov. When did Yaakov do all his growing? When he was relating to all his kids? When he was busy with his wives? No. What was the night that Yaakov grew most in his life? Vayevaser Yaakov levado. The night that he was totally alone. That's the night that he fought the Esav inside. So I come to a place alone. I come to a place where this is just about me. And number one, I start understanding what behavior do I want to understand better about myself? Is there something that I do or don't do that's really not working for me? Let me think about that. Whatever week it is it whether it's my chesed, whether it's my gevura, this week is the compassion of Tiferes. So what about this midah? Do I know that I sort of need to reach in a different way? Number two, what's the history that I have with this midah? Did I get hurt? Did I hurt somebody else? Is there a trigger of some sort that's the reason behind it being difficult? That I know that I want to become better, but instead of just taking on another action, which never really works for that long, I want to get to understand what's been blocking the actions from holding. I want to understand what my history with this midah is about. So it's been hard for me to be totally compassionate with people. Let me start with the parts of me that's hard to be compassionate to. And maybe I could help that part of me feel more loved and feel more lovable. I know I'm not making sense. Let me give you a real-time example. Let me give you a real-time example. Okay. I have a part of me that is really lousy with confrontation, but really lousy. Like sweating and uncomfortable and feeling guilty and apologizing for it even when it's necessary, and really, really lousy. And getting to know this part of me, spending time sort of going inside and saying, what's the first experience I had with confrontation? Why is confrontation so scary and messy? Oh, I learned that part of me is about 8 years old. And from 8 years old on, confrontation became not a happy thing for me. So what's the first part of the agenda of filling that hole? Well, get rid of it. No, you've got to grow up. You're not 8 years old and just tell her you're done. No. What do you do for other people when you want to help them? You just hold them. So I take this 8-year-old and I say, honey, this is really tough. That was a hard time. That was a really hard time. So for an 8-year-old, you didn't do too bad because you could have used a lot more help. And let me just let you know how I feel and how proud I am that you gave it your all. You hold that 8-year-old and let her tell you everything she needs to tell you about what's hard about that time and what's hard about times like that. And you do nothing but that for a little while. And then you say, what do you think we could do now? Because let me tell you about me. I'm not 8. I have a degree. I could stand up for you. I could do a little better. So next time we have that problem, You stay here. I'll take care of it for you. I'll tell you how it works out. But the bottom line is that I'm learning to have compassion for a part of myself that I might not have learned, that might have been blocking me in many ways. And the more that I could hold that part and hear that part and have compassion for that part, chances are I could then translate that in to doing the same for others and not judging them and not cutting them down and not being intolerant of them either. Ladies, is this making sense? Just tell me. Yeah? So tamimos, I'm filling my holes in the way that I'm getting to know parts of me too. I'm getting to know the blocks that I've had, getting to know why is it hard for me to do chesed for that type of person? Why can I like those people and not those people? I'm getting to know how come when I give to them I bond, when I give to them I end up feeling like just really lousy. Just getting to know what's behind the thoughts and the feelings that are behind the actions or the inactions in a way that I really complete myself. And then to say, now I might have some work to do with other people, but that's going to be a piece of cake once I'm coming from a place of completion. That I have Rei Acha, I know who I am, now I could give to somebody else. So it was so funny when one summer I was with my kids in Israel, and for a week of our stay, my sister actually said, can I share the house? I want to just come. I'll be with you and your kids. I'll stay for a week. So during that week, God was so good. I would not have been able to come up with this on my own. So there was a certain way of my kids behaving to each other that always made me very impatient. When one did not hear the other and pretended to just ignore them. That always made me crazy. Like, be there for your sibling, love your sibling, just tune in. So sure enough, my sister and I are in the kitchen, and one of my kids is downstairs, one is upstairs, and the one upstairs is yelling to the one downstairs to get her a blow dryer. She says, you have your blow dryer, like my hair is wet, and the one downstairs is sitting with a book, totally ignoring her sister. So she said, I need the blow dryer. Can I please have the blow dryer? I don't know where you left it. Ignoring her sister. So I walk into the room and I take the book and I said, excuse me, can't you help your sister? She says, Ma, I didn't hear my sister. I said, what do you mean you didn't hear? Your sister's screaming. She says, Ma, give me the benefit of the doubt. I promise I was so in the book, I did not hear her screaming my name. I said, wow, okay. I believe you. So sorry. Help her now. I walk into the kitchen and I said to my sister, I have no idea why something like that makes me so disproportionately angry whenever they ignore each other. She goes, Karen, you don't know why that makes you disproportionately angry? That was your life. I ignored you for 15 years. Just get a hold. And would you believe that I blocked that trauma out of my mind? But the minute that she said that, and I had compassion for that little girl that I was, and forgiveness maybe for her, all of a sudden from then on, whenever it happened, I said to my kids, you might not have heard, Chani, she needs you. But that block was all about me. It was all about me not filling that hole and getting in touch with what that was really about. So enough of my self-analysis, we're going back. So there's a lot of parts of us, a lot of old parts of us that might have meant well, that might have served us well. They might have been those bumps and they got covered with a piece of wood that was carved out. But now we're growing out of that. We want to take those boards apart. We want to shave it down. We want to make it smooth because we're really ready for higher quality merchandise inside. And we want to just have it be something that's a foundation that we could count on, that's not going to cave in the wrong times with the wrong people. So that's the tamimos. What do we find when we get to the core after those 7 weeks? What is the definition of the fullest self? It's our neshama. The neshama was always tamima. It was always complete. All those problems and all those protrusions and all those errors in planning, they were all the result of stuff that was outside and external to our neshama. The truest neshama was always complete. So when you say to yourself, I'm so overwhelmed by the Sefira work, this is so unnatural, true, but it's bringing you back to what your original nature was all about. The reason that we don't feel right when relationships are sour or when we do act disproportionately in any which way is because we know we're not at peace because we're not us at those times. You don't feel like you in those times because you're not you. So yes, it's unnatural to go back to that, but that's truly who you've been all along. All those layers have really just been in the way of you. It's so important to remember that when you start any work of teshuvah, it's teshuvah, lashuv, you're returning to who you really always were. You're just getting rid of the guk and the stuff that's been in your way because you've been in that mitzrayim of negative thinking or limited thinking or whatever else it was. So you get back to that core that did experience Sinai, that came to Sinai and was healed and was whole that first time, and it's going to get that way again every single year. I want to prove to you how we know that. This is a wonderful thought from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It says that the date of Sinai that we actually celebrate Shavuos every year on is Vav Sivan, the 6th of Sivan. What happened to all of our neshamos on the 6th of Sivan? They received the first set of tablets. What happened to the first set of tablets? They are no more. They were destroyed. The men messed up. They're not with us. So we had to beg and we had to yearn and we had to prove ourselves, and God forgave us, and he granted us the second imperfect set of tablets on Yom Kippur. Ask the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who are we to keep Shavuos on Vav Sivan if it's a farce? We don't have those Vav Sivan tablets anymore. Why not keep Shavuos on Yom Kippur? We don't deserve the cheesecake. We should be keeping Shavuos on Yom Kippur. That's authentic. And he said, no. Yes, that's accurate, but it's not authentic. Because Hashem always sees us as our Vav Sivan selves. The day that we did come to Sinai perfectly, when our neshamos and our sincerity were intact, and we screamed out, Na'aseh v'nishma, we need this, we want this, we're in. That is the self that Hashem always sees us as, even if we don't remember being that way, even though we messed up and we don't feel we deserve to be seen that way. That is the date, ladies, that Shavuos is, because that's who we really are. We've never lost that. And Hashem has never stopped seeing that. That is the truest self that we come to after every single cycle of the spiritual cleanse of Sefira. We just have to remind ourselves that it's real, that it always is and always will be. So when we realize that the Tamim is really us, when we realize that that pure person is really us, we usually feel after Sefira, even if we've done any work, we just feel lighter. We feel like we're not carrying as much stuff that's in our way. That's the goal. Then you have room for the cheesecake. But that beauty, and I want to give you this frame. We started by talking about freedom with responsibility. Let's end with it. Relationships are the greatest responsibility in our life. Relationships that are just left to be free love, freedom of speech, do anything, be anything, and make the other person swallow it. Those aren't relationships of freedom. Those are relationships where we're enslaved being our worst selves. relationships that use the model of the Sefirot, the model of God's traits as a model, those are relationships that are free. They're free from being self-centered. They're free from lacking shleimut and shalom. They're free from lacking potential of becoming something bigger and growing to be in a better place within yourself with that person. So it's only when Pesach leads to Shavuos through Sefira that we really gain the freedom of how we could use all these tools of who we are. What happens if, God forbid, we didn't have Sefira? I'll tell you. The first night of Pesach, always the day of the week of the first evening of Pesach, always correlates to the evening of Tisha B'Av of that coming year. Why? Because if a Jew gets out of Mitzrayim but goes nowhere else, the only place that leads is to a Tisha B'Av, to a destruction. That you'll just implode. You'll just stay enslaved in even a worser way because you got a taste and you're frustrated by not knowing where to go with it. But a Jew that gets out of Pesach turns that into a Shabbat, the mentality of now I could think, I'm free to reflect, I'm free to allow the thoughts of Hashem into me and become me. That Jew counts 7 weeks. They become complete and they come to a Shavuot. Shavuot does not just mean weeks, ladies. It means promises. That Jew becomes the fulfillment of the promise of the human being that God created her to be. So I wish us all a phenomenal journey, a phenomenal satisfaction of knowing that even one hole is getting that much fuller, and the joy of hard work, because there's nothing like hard work when you know that it's creating something that's eternal. So wonderful, wonderful year ahead. Yitz Hashem. All right, so we'll open it up to any questions, please. Anybody else there?
Chani, I have a question.
Okay, hi.
Hi. So if for the last few weeks a person was not like so involved in these thoughts so it's natural to say, well, I missed the bandwagon and it's probably too late to pick up. And so can you like give us some kind of dialogue for our Yetzer Hara that actually can let us hit the ground running when we get off this Zoom with you?
So you didn't miss much. There's less than, there's only there's not that many days that we're done yet, just a little more than 2 weeks. But I think that it's basher to start wherever we are. Every day. How do we start Sefira? We say Hayom Yom. Today is a day, and that's a beautiful attitude. I'm focusing on just today. Hayom Yom. We don't say that that there's this cumulative number. We say Hayom Yom. This is the day. So I could either catch up and look over those days, and that's one option. But if I don't have time for that, just wherever I start. And not every day can be a focus day, and that's also all right. The concept of all or nothing is very rarely healthy. Very rarely healthy. That I think any all or nothing, right, never works in any form of growth or diet plan. So it's always about, what could I do that was a little more than I would have done had I not done it. It's really, I remember sitting in my first class in graduate school, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, do you know how much more I have to go? Like, is this worth it? And it's too much. And a lovely elderly woman said to me, honey, I know you're worried, but do you know that those years will go by if you don't do anything too? And that was a very good message. So it's the first class. You're in a class. This is the day, Hayom Yom. My father used to say that the greatest currency in life is time. How do you know that? That you could tell who a person is by what they count. Some people count friends, some people count money. Imelda Marcos used to count shoes, remember? So what does God count? There's only one thing in the Torah that God counts: days. So they must be the world's most greatest currency. Whenever a Jew does something, that's why in the olden days they used to give bar mitzvah boys a watch. I don't know what they write, because it was to show how to use your time. That was the message. The father would tell him how to use your time. So the beauty of just saying, Hayom Yom, today's the day. How do I want to use it? How do I want to focus on that midah one little bit more? And when I was taking that walk today, what generated that thought? Because today was Sefira Shabbat. So I said, I must have to use this in a way that's for my completion. I can't complete somebody else. But anything that happens to me today. So yesterday, I don't know if I was as tapped into the thought. I didn't go there as much. But today it meant something more to me. We'll see about tomorrow.
Thank you.
Chani,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It was an amazing class. I don't know where I lost you, but I lost you somewhere. Oh, there you are. I love your story of being 8 years old with your sister and realizing where that's coming from. So the part 2 on that is, once you identify where that emotion came, what do you do with that identity? Is it that you have to reshift let's say you always reacted pretty cool, but now you identify it. What do you do once you've identified where that emotion comes from? What do you do with it?
You spend a little time with that little girl. You let her know that you want to hear it all. And then you introduce her to you. And you realize that you could separate her from yourself. That why do things affect us in such deep ways that are old? Because we're still triggered by the old stuff, right? If I tap you on the shoulder, you'll turn around. But if you have a sunburn, you're going to jump. So our old burns make us react to things much bigger than we really need to, right? Once you identify that it's old and that you could separate out that old part from who you are now, you're looking at it from the outside. And then it doesn't have to control you anymore. You've given it the attention that it needed. You've taken care of it and reassured it that you'll take over. So now it could just be. Does that make sense?
Completely.
So it doesn't mean that the knee jerk might not happen, but you'll know what it is and say, oh, honey, I got it. I got your back. You're okay. Remember who I am? I'm the big lady that's going to help.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. So have a wonderful night. And here's to learning more. Mitzvah Shem.
Chani, thank you.
Pleasure.
It was so beautiful. Wow. So
Glad.
beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you everybody for being here. Have a beautiful
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for arranging. This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.